should be in that.
And even on the subway, the things they were saying.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible. Very bad, you know?
It's good.
If you could you shut off the sound?
The live stream?
Yes, please.
I had the privilege of
Thank
saying,
you. Much
I got
better.
to speak to both your father
Either
and
way.
also
My father.
your father-in-law and a little bit his mother. Yeah, but it was, what about his family?
Don't go to Shavuot first because that really goes high.
Well, do you want to just go to Musaf and do? That's a little depressing.
It's such a great song.
No, it's a great song, but it really right now is connected to the.
For a guy who sings all of his life,
Yeah.
these are the moments where you don't have a direction.
Yeah. I mean, I have plenty of songs in here.
What's a Shavuot song?
I was gonna go to the Musaf and sing some of the stuff you were singing before,
Perfect.
you know.
Musa.
But you got me all over the place. You got Psukkah de Zimra.
You do Hallel.
We're gonna do Hallel tomorrow,
Okay.
but maybe I could teach something new for Hallel. Maybe I could teach something new from Hallel. That's for Slichas.
I'm trying.
Let me look at Hallel. Maybe I can teach something new.
In Hallel.
Yeah,
You way too past it.
yeah,
Before the Torah service.
that's right. Shachrit.
Keep going. We're going to do something from Holland.
Yeah,
From Holland?
Holland.
Something
Exactly.
with a tulip.
They're tall. The Dutch.
Let's see. Oh, that's a nice song. Let's see. Nope, there's nothing there. Ooh, Agdamus. You ever sing Agdamus? You don't sound interested.
It's a long one. I'm looking for one that's catchy for the people that are here.
Oh, you want something catchy. You did say that.
You know, in the Mishpacha Minyan, I do Hine. Hine.
Mato.
Uma.
Hey. So you were doing B'nai V'cham before,
I know what I was doing.
and
I'm a student of this book.
yes, you are. Let's see. These are all so old and done. Trying to find something new and fresh and hot. Something exciting.
We're looking for something fresh and exciting. From Jewish liturgical dirges.
There's really nothing here.
We just
I suggested that.
we just talked about Octa.
How about Yizkor? You want to do Yizkor? Yosef?
Whatever you want to sing. I'm going to sing with you. What are people going to know?
See it?
Hodu Ladonai Ki
I don't.
Tov.
Well, you want to sing something they know, or you want me to teach something
Oh,
new?
teach something. Okay. You want to teach them? What are you going to teach? Okay.
I like
I
this
can do
one.
a
yeah.
panel conversation about
No, we're gonna teach something. What are you gonna teach? Page 134.
So, yeah, if you go to page 134, page 134 is in the Hallel. And, you know, the danger of teaching something new is that it must, by default, replace something old, at least for that moment. And everyone is used to the old melodies, and they don't like when you change it on them. However, there are 2 days coming up, 2 opportunities for Hallel. So maybe one day we'll sing something a little bit more something you haven't heard that often before. I think I've sung it a few times, but not that often. So this is, if you go towards the bottom of the page, and maybe count up, 8 lines, you have Yosef Adonai Alechem. We're in the blue book on page 134. Yosef Adonai Alechem. Yeah, 8 lines from the bottom. Now this is a beautiful melody written in the 1970s by a contemporary of my father and a cantor who served in Israel. And it goes like this. Yosef Adonai Alechem 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 Ve'al Benechem Beruchim Atem L'Adonai Ose Shamayim V'Aretz. Let's try it. Yosef Adonai Alechem 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 Ve'al Benechem Beruchim Atem L'Adonai Ose Shamayim V'Aretz. And then there's a little bit of cantorial recitative, goes like this. Hashamayim shamayim shamayim l'Adonai ve'aretz ve'aretz natan livnei adam. Hashamayim shamayim shamayim l'Adonai ve'aretz natan livnei adam. And here's a part we can sing together. Lo hametim hallelujah ve'lo kol yoredei duma v'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam me'ata ve'ad olam. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. So let's sing that part together. Lo hametim, lo hametim, yeah, hallelujah. Ve'lo kol yoredei duma v'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam me'ata ve'ad olam. Hallelujah. Shvayach.
You do the whole thing one time?
Sure. Absolutely. You want to try and sing it with me? Oh yeah. Okay.
Why don't I try while you do,
Okay.
and we'll see how it works out.
Here we go. Yosef. Yosef Adonai Alechem 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 Ve'al Benechem Beruchim Atem L'Adonai Ose Shamayim V'Aretz. Hashamayim shamayim shamayim l'Adonai ve'aretz ve'aretz nata livnei adam. Hashamayim shamayim l'Adonai ve'aretz Meret Natan Livnei Adam. Together, Lo Hametim Yeh Hallelujah Velo Kol Yoredei Duma Vanachnu Nevarech Yamei Ata Ve'ad Olam. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Easy and simple, right?
Come on. That was beautiful. When was the last time you sang that? Just pops it out. Amazing. Hag Sameach. Marilyn is here, so we can get going. It's amazing. Thank you. My title is Mysterious. They tell you to make mysterious titles that are somehow alluring or intriguing. And I thought, given the year that we've experienced, it's especially important as Jews for us to find ways where we can connect with one another, where we can see through and past labels and what are often false divisions, to feel the unity of the Jewish people and to feel the connection so that we experience something shared, not just when we have to confront hate or negativity, but more importantly, every day. Every day when we see Jews on the subway or on the train or in the store who are different than we are and do different things than we do, to be able to feel and sense and celebrate the things that we have in common. Right? So that's really the theme of my presentation, stealing strongly from an incredible educator, Avraham Infeld. Has anyone here heard of Avraham Infeld? Got one, okay. Well, so we got a couple, but powerful teacher from Israel. And we'll get to him in a minute. His kind of conception. Is it? Yeah, it's not loud enough. Is that better? I can make sure to project. You know, I'll share with you one of the challenges of being a young, rambunctious boy who has trouble sitting and being quiet, is that throughout your youth, you're told you're too loud. And then you spend years and years and years trying to be quieter and so that people don't get upset. And then you have to remember, wait a second, I can actually project. So, at the beginning of my rabbinic career, I hate saying that, when I became a rabbi who was serving a congregation in Fairfax, Virginia in 2003, I had the honor and the privilege of participating in a very strong interfaith dialogue. You might be aware of this because you're from New York, but most Americans aren't, that the federal government, after 9/11, gave money to municipalities that were struck by 9/11 to do interfaith work. And so Fairfax County received money from some departments of the government for us to do interfaith work. And we would meet with churches and mosques and a couple synagogues each year, visiting each one, right? And for me, interfaith work is really important. It's vital. And it's really important that we do it the right way. Because there's a right way and there's a wrong way, I think. The wrong way is to squash any appearance of differences and to say, oh, we're all the same. It's just a different name. We're doing the same thing. Because we're not. We're very different. And that's okay. It's actually a beautiful thing that we have different approaches to religious and spiritual topics and how to live. Those differences are fine as long as we can live together. So talking about your differences and learning to appreciate what another group does that's different than you is actually very valuable. And to say, we get there, but a very different way. And to appreciate that about one another, right? But one of the challenging things for me was to get up and present in front of this group because the title is Interfaith Dialogue. And one of the first things I had to say is that the title is a lie. The title is a lie. This is not an interfaith dialogue. Because while Christianity is a faith and Islam is a faith, Judaism is not a faith. We're not a religion. And that is shocking news to many non-Jews. And actually, it's kind of shocking news to a lot of Jews as well. That Judaism is not a religion. Is that surprising news to you if I say that, or does that make sense? If it's shocking, just raise your hand so I can get a sign. Okay. So what do I mean that Judaism is not a religion? I mean a couple things. One thing is that the word religion doesn't apply to Judaism because all of the words that we have in English to describe spiritual life as a group come from Christianity. They're all marinating in and grown from ideas that are Christian, which is not bad. It's totally fine. It's just that it's not us. It's not ours. And here's a great example that will, I hope, prove my point. When two people decide that they are getting so intimate with one another that their relationship reaches a new plateau or a new height or a new level, what do we say in English? What have they done? They have, what's the verb? They have something in love. They have fallen in love. Fallen in love. Now, does that make any sense? Do you feel like you're low when you are in love? No. You feel very up, spirited, right? So why do we say fall in love? Because of the fall from grace of the original sin of Adam and Eve. Not Jewish. And how do we say fall in love in Hebrew? Cantor? Lehitahev. It's a reflexive verb, right? Lehitahev. Because language is incredibly important to culture. You can't describe a different culture with a different language very well, and especially when it comes to talking about Judaism. So English words don't really work. So that's why we're not a religion. Partially because the word doesn't apply, but also because we're very different than Christianity and Islam. And I'll give a very easy way to see the difference. What defines if you are a Christian or a Muslim? The same thing, although in slightly different versions. What you believe. What you believe. If you believe that Jesus Christ is your Savior, that makes you Christian. Now, there might be other details, but that's what makes you Christian. And if you don't believe that anymore, you might have a Christian culture, but you're not Christian. Islam is similar in that it's a belief that Allah is God and Muhammad is his true prophet. In fact, like you say that in a certain way, it makes you a Muslim. And Yossi Klein Halevi tells a very funny story in his book about the Garden of Eden, about doing interfaith dialogue back in 2000, where he was in Gaza and visiting an imam, and the imam kept trying to get him to say the statement of faith. It was kind of like a game for Yossi, right? But you make the statement, it makes you a Muslim. What makes you Jewish? Bagels? No, not for Persians, right? What makes you Jewish? So one thing is you are born Jewish. That's good. And the other thing is you can choose Judaism, right? And how do you choose Judaism? Is it just you make a statement, I'm a Jew, I believe in Judaism? You convert, and the process of conversion involves a lot of different things, like it does in Christianity and Islam, right? But what's the thing that makes you Jewish when you convert? No. Those are details that are part of it. There's a thing that you do, and it makes you Jewish. Before that, you're not a Jew. After it, you're a Jew. Mikvah. Mikvah. You could be living a halachic life. You could be a perfect Jew on paper, right? And you're standing naked, and you haven't gone in the mikvah yet, you're not a Jew. You don't go in the mikvah, you don't become a Jew. But you immerse in the mikvah, right? You say the blessing, boom, you're a Jew. Because for us, faith is a component, but it's not the only thing. In fact, an older friend used to say that to be a good Jew, you have to believe in one God or fewer. Not as many laughs as I was expecting. Thank you for fulfilling my quota. I appreciate it. Now, you might think I'm quibbling or I'm making like fine details of difference that really don't amount to anything, but they actually are very important and significant. I'll give an example. One example from within Judaism and one from without. Okay? So within Judaism, if we accept the dichotomy, which is Western and Christian, that a person is either religious or secular, right? If we accept the dichotomy, then we're going to say or think that a person who counts themselves as part of a religious community, behaves like they're part of a religious community, maybe dresses like they're part of a religious community, we're going to assume that they are religious and have faith. People make that assumption all the time. And if someone seems secular, doesn't do anything that seems religious, people will make the presumption that they are not religious. They don't have faith. They don't have a connection to God. When both of those ideas couldn't be further from the truth. There are many people who live in a religious community and live a religious lifestyle, but have no faith. And there are plenty of Jews who have tons of faith, but just aren't observant. Because we are more complicated. Now that's within our own self-understanding. But we see this, especially today, in a pernicious way from outside, where we've heard recently people who are ignorant, but people saying, well, I'm not opposed to your Judaism, I'm just opposed to your Zionism. Because one is your religion, and the other is some sort of political doctrine of dominance and whatever, right? As if you can separate them. That misunderstanding is really important to correct. It's really a vital thing to challenge. So there is a beautiful kind of concept, and even comes with a web page called the five-legged table. And as we're passing out these the sheets, as we're passing them out, I'm going to tell a story from our days at the Jewish Theological Seminary. Now, when we were at the seminary and the Beit Midrash was in the basement, an amazing, lovely rabbi named Rabbi Morris Shapiro, and he was from Nassau County, so I don't know if any of you have ever met him or learned with him, but Rabbi Morris Shapiro, who had retired, would come to the Beit Midrash, and he would help us with texts that we didn't understand. Okay? And Rabbi Shapiro was an amazing, amazing person, human being, and rabbi. So Rabbi Shapiro grew up in Eastern Europe. And when his community, we're going to go over the entire page, so you don't have to look at it right now. I know that it's hard to not look at what we're holding, but you're going to really appreciate this story. So Rabbi Shapiro grew up in Eastern Europe before the war. And when his town or city figured out what was happening in the Shoah, they realized they had enough money to save one person. He was 16 years old and the best student in the yeshiva. And they decided to save him. Still gets me. So Rabbi Shapiro, he said they told him, we want you to go. And he said he would only go if he could take one of his sisters. So he and his sister made it to America. The rest of his family was murdered. He would tell us stories about being in the yeshiva and trying to stay up super late to learn more. And in the wintertime, they would get buckets of snow to put their feet in so they could stay alert and learn late at night. So he comes to America not speaking any English, and I think he graduated with a BA in like 2.5 years and a PhD in like a few more years, and then JTS made him a rabbi. I believe he taught abnormal psychology at Nassau County Community College, if my memory serves. And we were celebrating him at one point in the Beit Midrash, and a student asked a challenging theological question, which was, as Rabbi Shapiro was talking about kind of the three pillars of Judaism, God, Torah, and Israel, the student asked, Rabbi Shapiro, given what you've experienced, given your story, and given the loss of your family, how do you relate to God? And Rabbi Shapiro very kind of humbly said, well, he talked about God, he kind of reframed God, Torah, and Israel. And he said, sometimes 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Right? Sometimes 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Which is, I think, a really amazing statement given his story. Well, this not rabbi, he's an educator. Avram Infeld's idea is that 3 out of 5 ain't bad. He says Judaism is a 5-legged table. And I was really pleased to come across his teaching because I've been railing or preaching that Judaism is not a religion for many, many years. And to see someone of such esteem with also great learning material behind it with the same idea was very pleasing to me, comforting. And his conception here is quite sharp. So, as he says, if you have a 5-legged table, it is very stable, very strong. What about a 4-legged table? Still works, right? 3-legged table. What do we call a 2-legged table? A ramp? Or broken, right? Yeah. It's not working, and we're not even going to go to 1, right? So he says a 5-legged table, that if there are 5 pillars of Judaism, if you can own 3 of them, then you're doing well. Now, the best is to own all 5, right? If every Jew in the world owned all 5 of them, then we'd be set. We'd be strong, very strong. But sometimes, as we would say in Rabbi Shapiro's memory, 3 out of 5 ain't bad either, right? So what are these 5 pillars? If you flip it over, you can see explanations. Okay, so number 1 is that, as he says, Jews don't have history, they have memory. Jews don't have history, they have memory. Anybody have a sense of what he might mean by that? Or an example from our tradition? There's a really well-known example of that from the Passover Seder, for example. What's our obligation on Passover? To tell the story. And when we talk about slavery, are we supposed to talk about it as if it's something that happened to other people back then? And that they were redeemed? No, right? We're supposed to see ourselves as if we were redeemed, right? We're not talking about history. We're supposed to be talking about it as if it's our memory. Our memory, our story, right? That we make our own. In fact, through the conversion process, that's a big part of it, is like starting to see the Jewish story as your own story. That's really like the moment of kind of the tipping point in conversion often, right? So we're not about history, we're about memory. And there are 2 great examples, one from Passover I just gave, another actually from this holiday of Shavuot. Thank you, Rose. Say it a little bit louder. Right? That it's like the Midrash teaches every Jewish soul that would ever be was present at Mount Sinai for the receiving of Torah. Right? Because it's personal. It's ours. It's not something that happened. It's our own memory. Right? So memory is number 1. Number 2, and I think we've been all feeling this acutely for the past 10 months. And probably if you were here last night and you heard Ron Segev speak, you feel like you have an additional member of your family now, because Jews are family, right? We are part of the same family. And that means that if we find, one of my favorite examples is a beautiful couple I knew in Madison, Wisconsin. their son, back in like 1974, 1975, was on a road trip and had a horrible accident in the middle of South Dakota. 1974, right? Middle of South Dakota, horrible accident. They find out he's in the hospital, and it's in a bad way. He survives, but it was a bad thing, right? So what happens? They're getting ready to go to somewhere in South Dakota, and a family in the congregation says, wait a second, and they get on the phone because this family was in the scrap business. And scrap metal, especially then, was a Jewish business. They call their network, they find out who the scrap dealers are in that town, and this couple not only they lived with this family for 8 weeks while their son recovered in the hospital. Not just they visited, not just they gave them some food, they lived with them. That's Jewish family. We know it, we feel it, we experience it all the time. So that's number 2. You feel family. Number 3, covenant. Mount Sinai. What we talked about earlier, what we celebrate tonight, is our connection to God through Torah. And here we talk about the recognition of one God, and maybe being challenged by that, but at least one God or fewer. That we have a mission in the world to make it a better place. And that there are rules and customs that define who we are in time and space. So even though Avram is an Orthodox observant Jew, his conception here of covenant is pretty open, right? That's a pretty accepting way to kind of say you have to have a connection to covenant and Torah. Number 4, the fourth is Hebrew, right? And as we saw from falling in love versus lihitahev, Hebrew is our language. It's the language of our culture, our art. I won't say our history. It's the language of our memory, right? It's the language that speaks with a Jewish soul. So you'll see the example here about falling in love as well, so you can quote it if you would like. So Hebrew is incredibly important. That's why is it that our children are struggling and working to learn how to master pronouncing and hopefully understanding a little bit of Hebrew? Why do we spend so much time on it? It's not just a bar to jump over for bar bat mitzvah. It's because it's the language of our people. It's about connection and belonging. And so Hebrew is number 4. And 5 is Israel. And we have to remember, Israel is 2 things. Maybe 3 things, but it's at least 2 things here. It's Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, and it's also Medinat Yisrael. Right? Eretz Yisrael, as I've heard Avram say, whoever is in power or in control of the land is full of Jewish memory. You can't go around a wadi or a corner without a Bible story or a story from the Talmud or something from the Jewish story. The land just breathes our tradition and our people. And of course, for those who are old enough to remember, Medinat Yisrael means there's no such thing as a Jewish refugee anymore. Something that was a constant of the world for 1,800 years doesn't exist anymore because of Medinat Yisrael. It's a good question. So, here are 5. The question is, can you own 3 of them? Because one of the beautiful things about owning 3, in addition to having a steady table, is that if every Jew in the world can hold on to 3 of them and own 3 of them, that means that every Jew in the world has at least one of them in common. At least one pillar that we can hold together and celebrate as something we share and something that we hold in common. And so that's another reason why it's a very powerful model of whatever we are as Jews, a people with a faith tradition. I don't know if we don't have the word yet. We are Am Yisrael. I don't think we can translate that directly into English because it means so much more than the people of Israel. But this is a really powerful model for us and a conception of peoplehood that allows us both flexibility and also a model of having something in common. And so as we go forward and try to explain what Judaism is to coworkers, neighbors, children, and grandchildren, remember there's one word you can't use because it's not a religion. A lot of words here you can use. Leave that up to you. But we can't use the word religion. And by not doing so, we begin to kind of share really who we are with the world. So I hope that this Shavuot will have a lens into that a little bit more. We have great sessions coming up. We're going to first have Mariv. Okay, we're gonna either practice this song that we're gonna sing Sunday if you were here on Shabbat and learned it already, or have a chance to learn. We're gonna sing together. It's a beautiful song that we're going to do together at Israel Fest on Sunday. Where is Israel Fest on Sunday? Thank you. Let's hear that a little bit louder. The Tillis Center, exactly. The Tillis Center. And at LIU Post. Right off of Northern Boulevard. Even I know that, so none of you have excuses. But pass it out.
Andrew, as you pass those out, I'm going to just take one small piece of liberty that has not been approved, but I hope you'll tolerate me. I want you to imagine that we are at the base of Mount Sinai. We're waiting. We're waiting and waiting for this great revelation, for the Torah. And you tell me, what was the scene like, right? There was shaking, like earthquakes. What did the people see and hear? Anyone remember? Was it sunny weather? No, there was lightning and there was thunder, and it was pretty scary. Now so they were hearing the lightning and the thunder, and there's a whole thing about what did they see, what did they hear, but there's one thing I'm pretty sure of. As we stood as a people at the base of Mount Sinai, what did we not hear? We didn't hear any phones ringing. We didn't hear any bings or funny, things that come out of our phones, or our watches. So what I would like to do, because we started the tikkun before the holiday actually has started, when we do Mariv, we're going to be going into the holiday proper, which means it's time to stow all of your electronics and make sure that they're either off or silent. And of course, you're always welcome to use them outside the building. So thank you for hearing my message with kindness. And we all stand together at the foot of the mountain. Cantor, take it away.
Okay, thank you. All right, first of all, shkoyach to the rabbi, wonderful teaching. If I had one question for the rabbi, and I'm not sure it's obviously not the time right now because it's probably a lengthy answer, but when people say the Jewish religion, so how do we respond to that? What is our relationship to our religion? So I don't know if you want to answer it now, but.
Yeah, well, I think you pique everyone's interest by saying, well, the first thing is we're not a religion,
Right.
and then you have lunch.
Okay.
Explain it.
All right, so just to refresh your memories, it has been decided wonderfully by the committee that produced Israel Fest for the last 10 years to introduce something new this year, something that has been around as a concept for a while, called Kululam. Who's familiar with the concept of Kululam? Right, so many of you are. So Kululam basically is an opportunity to grab a very large crowd and teach them one song to sing together, and then record it, either just sound or video, and put it out into the world, right? So you can be part of this experience this coming Sunday at Israel Fest, and the song that was chosen is Yachad. Yachad means to be together. And this is the theme of after October 7th. We have found that the Jewish people came together to not only support each other, but to increase the strength of our people as we face a very brutal enemy that has to be defeated. And you can only do it together. So, Yachad. So I'll teach you the song. I think many of you know the melody, have heard it before, so it shouldn't be new. But this is the way that it will be recorded. Okay, so there's a little bit of a new opening to it. As you see, it says intro. It goes like this. Yachad, kulanu yachad. Join in when you can. Yachad, nashir beyachad, yachad. איך שהלב נפתח, חובק את העולם, ובקריאה גדולה, נשיר לאהבה. אמרו הכל אפשר, זה לא מאוחר, השחר כבר עלה, זמן לאהבה. 2, 3, 4, יחד, לב אל לב נפתח ונראה את האור שבשמיים. יחד, לב אל לב נפתח בתקווה לאהבה. So open up your hearts and let us do our part to make this world a place of beauty, joy, and grace. And if we just believe, then we can all achieve a world with no more wars and everyone at peace. 1, 2, 3, 4, Yachad, heart to heart, our light will shine bright. Reach the highest heavens, Yachad, heart to heart, with hope as our guide. Our love will shine. Now it slows down a little. There's a drumming place, and we go again. Yachad, lev el lev, niftach venireh, ta'or sheba shamayim. Yachad, lev el lev, niftach betikva. לאהבה ורק אם נאמין ובלי שום דאווין בדרך העולה זה שיר לאהבה. And the la 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 is in the original tempo. La 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 la. And the end is sort of like the beginning. Like this. Yachad, kulanu yachad, yachad, nashir beyachad. nashir beyachad. Now we scream out, Yachad. All right.
Since we're streaming, if it's not said here to the microphone, anyone who's watching doesn't hear. One thing to be aware of is that our own cantor wrote the beautiful English adaptation of the song for us, and it's part of the arrangement. So, Yashkoach.
So I hope you all come next Sunday and join us, and it's really going to be I think, a very moving experience to sing together with 1,000 people the same song. Please be there.
And now,
Okay, the Israel Fest will begin at 1:30 and last till 4:30, and this will happen just around 3 o'clock. Like at 2:50, they'll call everyone over to the stage, and at 3 o'clock, we will learn the song. So what I had asked of all of my colleagues, right, all the cantors in the area, was to do what I did, was to teach their congregations on last Shabbat and tonight the song. So hopefully there'll be already a good number of people who know the song. And then there'll be obviously people who are just coming to the event who may need to learn the song. So it will take about 10 minutes to teach it, and then we will go forward with the recording, and it should be very exciting.
and when we're singing, we should sing it as if we are
Yeah.
Yachad.
By the way, on the sheet, if you look on the right side, it says high voice. You don't have to worry about that. The guy who's orchestrating the whole thing and recording it has a couple of choirs that he works with. They're going to come to the event and sing the harmony, right? So they already know it.
Wow.
That's that.
Yashikoach. Yeah. So everyone,
I just have a question. Where will this recording be heard?
oh,
It'll, for the most part, it'll go into social media land and go around the world. That's really how
That's
Ulam
wondering if
gets
we were
around.
sending it to anybody in Israel or.
Yeah, you could, once it's done, it'll be a digital file. You can send it to whoever you want. You can put it on WhatsApp, and you can put it on Facebook, and
you could make it
that's
your
how it gets around.
you could make it your phone ringer, right?
It'll be viral.
Absolutely. And that it will be really wonderful when we all show up and we all sing, and it's a great energy. To get the holiday started in earnest and get you closer to desserts, page 28, we're going to stand for the Baruch and the beginning of Ma'ariv.
Baruchu et Adonai Amvorach. Baruch Adonai Amvorach Leolam Vaed. ומביא יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אלה חי וקיים את המילים לא חלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המריב ערבים כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו והם נגע יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ואהבת Adonai Elohechem emet, v'imuna kol zot kayam aleinu.
Page 32.
המעביר בניו בין גזר ים סוף את עורפיהם ויצונאיהם בתהומות טיבה וראו בנה גבורתו שיבחו ויודו לשמו ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות תוסיף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה לי ענו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל. ושמור את צאתנו, שמור את צאתנו בואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ויעל ירושלים. וידבר משה את מועדי אדוני אל בני ישראל יגדל ויקדש שמי רבה וילמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמרה במבורך ויעלם נייר מעורמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כה ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בימה ואמרו
We dive in the Amidah pages 41 to 44 quietly to ourselves, following the road signs for the holiday of Shavuot. Roma v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al Israel ve'imaru.
Amen. Oh, say shalom, be womav, say shalom, aleinu, ve'akol, ve'akol, Israel, ve'imaru. Amen.
יגדל ויגדש מרבה, ויעמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ומכון ובחיי דחו בית ישראל, והגלה זמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמרה במבורך, ליעלם וליעל מאוד מעיה, יתברך, יברך וישתבח וירפר ויתרומה ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לילה מכל בחטא ושרדה שבחטא ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יקבל צרות הון ובאות לכל ישראל, קדם ובהון וישמעיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה משמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו amen.
We turn to page 50 for Kiddush, and I invite any of our children or anyone who feels like they are a child at heart to come get some grape juice if they'd like. Okay, Jason.
Wait for the Kiddush. Don't drink yet.
Got some more? Well, Sandy, if anyone comes forward, we got some here. And you know where the juice is? I think that for. Okay. On page 50. Savri.
Hi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol olam v'romimanu mikol lashon v'kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava modim l'simcha hagim uzmanim l'sason et yom HaShavuot hazeh zman matan toratenu mikra kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashti mikol hamim u'modei kodshecha b'simcha v'sason hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Chag Sameach. That's true. Jordan's going to help us out.
Yeah, I have it right here. I got it right there.
Aleinu l'shavea
Adon
l'adon
hakol
l'atid gedula yotzer breshit shelo asan k'yoyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishus tadamar shelo sam elkenu kahem v'gor aleinu amonam bananu Mishravim umadim livnei melech malachei hamokim hakadosh baruch Hu.
Shakach. And you may be seated as we turn our hearts and our attention to the members of our communal family who have yard sites for this 6th day of Sivan, corresponding with June 12th. And we are remembering fondly Abel Kowalski, Edith Rosenthal, Ellen Krampf, Esther Mauricio, Isidore Adler, Gino Breitner, Lawrence Held, Albert Wine, Stephen Weinberg, and Regina Rosen. Other names to add for Kaddish? Did I get Abel? Moshe Vasara? Ayasha? Antonia, do you have? Thank you. So mourners and those observing the yard site now recite Mourner's Kaddish on page 52. Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma Divra Kiute, V'amlik Malchute, V'chayechon, U'v'yamechon, U'v'chayeh D'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala, U'v'zman Kari, V'imru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavarach, Leolam Lamei Almaya, Yitbarak, V'yishtabak, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shmei D'Kudisha, Brichu, Le'ela Min Kol Birkata V'shirata, Tush Birkata V'nechemata, Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru. Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru. Amen. Say Shalom Bimromav, Huya Say Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru. Amen. And we hope that with God's love and comfort and the support of your community, that these days, these observances find meaning and are easier to take, and together we say, Amen. Amen. Let's see, we're getting started, and we have a display of desserts out in the gallery. Thank you very much. Out in the gallery. We'll have a session 2. How long will we take for break? What do you think? So probably maybe about 10 of. And Rabbi Rosenthal's, you're going to introduce our speakers and take us through the 2 sessions. We have session 1. Actually, this was session 1. We have session 2, and then ice cream, and session 3. So we're very strategic about the placement of the ice cream. What about Hatikva? Yeah, it's a good question. Now? Why not? Yes. So we'll sing Hatikva. As everyone has hope of desserts on their minds, we will sing about the hope of the Jewish people.
Kol od baleva penima nefesh Yehudi homiya fate mizrach kadima ayin lezion tzofia or elov da tikvateinu hatikva bat shnot alpayim להיות חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. להיות חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. Not religious.
We really had to sing for our dessert.
That's right. Yeah. Don't
No, I'm just curious. I mean, it's still worthwhile, even if it's just for us, you know. I mean, it just we're processing this too, you know. It's, so, but for other people, it's maybe like, well, what really happened? I'm hearing different things. People are saying things were made up, you know. Like, I don't know if people take that much of an interest, or if they're walking by and go, oh, let's check this. It's not exactly a spur of the moment kind of thing. But,
15 minutes tops. Jose just asked me what time I think ice cream, and I said maybe like 40 minutes. Jose, yeah. Chag Sameach once again. So we're off to a good start with our Tikkun Leil Shavuot. We have had our keynote presentation. We have had our first foray into eating our dairy foods for tonight, as is the custom for Shavuot. And now we're really going to delve into the idea of having a multiplicity of learning sessions and learning opportunities. And this comes from a Kabbalistic idea of studying Torah all night long, which is what's known to us as the Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And there are many explanations for this, as there are with a lot of things in Judaism. But Shavuot is known as the commemoration of Matan Torah, of the time at which our ancestors stood at Mount Sinai and received the word of God. So we, in a sense, reenact their action of what it must have felt like the night before this momentous event. Maybe they were so excited to receive God's revelation the next day that they couldn't sleep, perhaps. So we stay up all night, or what we conceive of as all night here at TBS, when some of us need to go to bed by, 10:30, 11 at the latest. We stay up all night and we reenact our ancestors' experience by eagerly studying together to show how excited we are to symbolically receive God's word, which we'll do tomorrow when we have our reading from the Torah of the Ten Commandments. There's actually another narrative from the Midrash that says that the reason we stay up all night, or close to all night, on Leil Shavuot, is because our ancestors stayed up too late, perhaps the night before, and they failed to get up in the morning when they were supposed to on time to hear God's word and had to be awakened by Moshe. So in response to that midrash, we stay up all night, so to speak, so that we won't make the mistake of going to sleep and maybe not setting our alarms or hearing the rooster crow and missing our opportunity to receive God's word tomorrow morning. So whatever the reason, it has come down to us over the generations to have this practice of doing Torah study late into the night. And in many communities, because it's hard for one teacher to teach all night, it's evolved into a practice of hearing multiple teachings from multiple voices. This is something that we're proud to have started building back up at TBS. This is something that we did for many years. Pre-pandemic, we had a multiplicity of learning sessions with a multiplicity of presenters. And then, as did many programs over the heart of the pandemic era, we condensed a little bit. And last year and this year, we're really trying to build it back up again into a multifaceted evening with a multiplicity of speakers. One thing that we're doing a little bit differently tonight is that in the past, as you may recall, for those of you who have been to the Tikkun, we had different speakers speaking concurrently. So we would have one person in area A and one person in area B. This was wonderful because it enabled us to get a lot of presenters and to give them a decent amount of time, but sometimes there was also some disappointment if you wanted to hear person A and person B and you couldn't go to them at the same time. So logistically, it had pros and cons. So when the clergy and the leadership were talking about how to do this tonight, we decided to take a little bit of a different tack. We're going to have 4 presenters now who are all going to present in this room, essentially one after the other. But we've decided to ask them to do shorter presentations, not the 45 minutes to an hour that we usually do. We decided to do TED Talk style presentations and model this after the famous TED Talks in which people give meaningful but brief statements of something about themselves or something that they're interested in. So we're going to do this TED Talk style. We're going to have 2 presenters back to back. Then we'll take another break for ice cream because we know on the evening of Shavuot, you really only have like 45 minutes before people need another snack. That's about the limit. So we'll have 2 presenters. We're going to have Evan Parness and Rabbi Rebecca Ben Gideon. Then we'll take our ice cream break. And then we're going to have our two other presenters, Panina Saraf and Dr. Norman Freed, and they are going to present to us as well. So we'll get started in just a moment, but just a word to kind of let you know about the theme of all of these presentations. We decided to choose the theme of Am Yisrael, which of course you saw reflected in Rabbi Ben Gideon's presentation. And we thought this was a meaningful theme for this year when events have really challenged us to think about what it means to be a part of Am Yisrael. Truth be told, we also liked the theme of Am Yisrael because it was specific enough to be meaningful and vague enough so that different people could do presentations on aspects of Am Yisrael that they thought were meaningful to them, and everybody didn't have to have their presentation fall into the same box, so to speak. So we're looking forward to hearing some wonderful voices. And Evan, if you wouldn't mind starting us off, I'm going to ask each presenter to just give a little thumbnail introduction of who they are and share their presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Rosenthal, and thank you to Rabbis Ben Gideon Rosenthal for this lovely honor of being one of your teachers for this evening. I'm sorry you're stuck with me in no column A or column B, but I'm Evan Parnas. I'm an employment lawyer in New York, and I'm going to be speaking, hopefully briefly, about combating anti-Semitism in the workplace. And this is an issue that's been near and dear to my heart. As a Jewish person, as an attorney who works with companies on trying to be compliant with the employment laws, and obviously many of us have been subjected to various forms of discrimination, anti-Semitism, in the wake of 10/7 and others even before that. So I will dive right in with that introduction. And of course, I wish I didn't have to speak on the subject of combating anti-Semitism in the workplace. When I first began my career as an employment attorney in 2007, I could not have envisioned having to present on this topic, especially here in the New York area. I would say when I started my career, the bulk of employment discrimination cases involve other folks from other protected classes, whether it be African American, pregnant women, people with disabilities, older employees, folks who were experiencing various forms of discrimination in the workplace. But over the past decade, and even before the horrific October 7th massacre, anti-Semitism sadly has been on a rapid rise. 10 years ago, in 2014, the Anti-Defamation League's audit of anti-Semitic incidents recorded 914 anti-Semitic incidents in the US. By 2020, this had more than doubled to 2,026 incidents. And then 3 years later, last year, 2023, the ADL sadly recorded 8,873 anti-Semitic incidents across the United States. So over the course of a decade, a tenfold increase in anti-Semitic incidents. And the place where many of us spend the majority of our time, the workplace, has unfortunately been among the primary locations where Jewish people have experienced anti-Semitism. The ADL's 2021 survey on Jewish Americans' experiences with anti-Semitism found that business establishments were the fourth most frequent location where anti-Semitic incidents take place, with 52% of Jewish Americans reporting that they had experienced some form of anti-Semitism or discrimination in the workplace. And we're still awaiting updated workplace data following 10/7, but we can certainly, sadly, expect that number to have increased to even more alarming levels. So whether you're a business owner, if you're in management, or just a rank-and-file employee, there are steps that you can take to combat anti-Semitism in the workplace. This is something that we all should be in together now more than ever, and I'm hopeful in the next 10 minutes or so laying out some very practical, easy, low-hanging fruit in my mind of steps that people can take. You don't need to be a lawyer to be able to stand up for your colleagues. So I will provide a very brief overview of federal, New York State, and New York City laws. I'm not trying to make this into a law school class, but I think it is important to learn a little bit of the background of the laws that govern the workplace. and then provide some action items that employees and management can take. And if your workplace, unfortunately, does not take appropriate corrective action, I will also highlight some avenues that are available to employees to seek redress. And as a lawyer, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't provide the necessary disclaimers that my talk this evening does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and me. So that's out of the way. So our Employment Discrimination Law 101, we'll let that begin. I'm sorry for lawyers in the room, I didn't get this approved for CLE credit. But here in New York, employment discrimination is prohibited by laws at the federal level, the state level, and then for those of us who work in New York City, the New York City law as well. So as some of you may be aware, the federal law is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes it unlawful for an employer, and I'm going to quote now, to fail or refuse to hire or to discharge any individual or otherwise to discriminate against any individual with respect to his compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment because of such individual's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Now, after Rabbi Ben Gideon's talk about Judaism not being a religion, maybe there are other buckets that we Jews can use, such as national origin and or creed to advance our rights in the workplace. But under Title VII, this applies to any private employer, public employer with more than 15 employees. So any decent-sized employer. But if you're in New York State or New York City, which likewise have their own human rights laws that likewise prohibit discrimination based on religion, ethnicity, national origin, among other protected classes, it applies to smaller employers. So the New York State human rights law applies to any employer in New York State, regardless of the number of employees. So if you have 1 employee, 2 employees in New York State, the human rights law protects you, and in New York City, it's for employers with at least 4 employees in the city. So when it comes to anti-Semitism in the workplace, what do these laws, Title VII, the New York State human rights law, and the New York City human rights law protect against? So there's a number of different buckets of discrimination that the law recognizes. The first is disparate treatment. So this is where religion, ethnicity, national origin cannot be a motivating factor for an adverse employment decision. So in layperson's terms, decisions concerning hiring, firing, job assignments, pay, promotion, discipline, training, benefits, other terms and conditions of employment cannot be based on somebody's religion, ethnicity, national origin, and there are, of course, a host of other protected characteristics as well. So how in the post-10-7 world have we seen disparate treatment manifest itself? So I'll provide a hypothetical example, but that sadly some of you may be encountering in your own workplaces. So let's say we have 2 employees are in a heated conversation in the lunchroom about the war in Gaza. A non-Jewish employee shouts, "Israel is an apartheid state, and Hamas's actions on 10/7 were justified," and a Jewish employee shouts in response, "You're an ignorant fool." So HR intervenes, places the Jewish employee on a probationary warning, but chooses not to provide a warning to the non-Jewish employee because they have a lot of young people who have expressed concern over certain actions in Israel. That, of course, would be disparate treatment. You are treating a Jewish employee differently than a non-Jewish employee when they engage in similar conduct, yelling at one another about something. Certainly, there are other things that we're seeing right now where workplaces are thankfully refusing to hire people who have engaged in hateful anti-Semitic conduct or speech, whether it's on a college campus or the like. And I want to put a brief pin in what an employee should do if you're in that lunchroom and somebody spews those heinous comments, which leads me to the next form of workplace discrimination, which is a hostile work environment or harassment. And a hostile work environment is a term that is thrown around a lot colloquially, but there is a legal definition to a hostile work environment. So under federal law, is when conduct or speech in the workplace is so severe or pervasive that it creates an environment that rises to a level that would interfere with a reasonable person's ability to perform their job duties. And this is under the federal law, and it's a sliding scale. So there are things that are so severe that if they happen once in the workplace, that would create a hostile work environment. So God forbid somebody has swastikas all over the workplace, chants death to Jews, the example I just gave about somebody shouting Hamas's actions were justified, that I think the law, and of course it's up to a judge and common law, but I think judges thankfully are following common sense, would determine something like that is so severe that if it happens once, that does create a hostile work environment. Pervasive, on the other hand, is maybe something that's less severe but still pernicious, where people engage in stereotypes, saying, sometimes you may hear somebody say, "Oh, you're Jewish. You didn't look Jewish," or Stein should take on that accounting assignment. I hear Jews are good with money. Maybe it's still based on stereotypes, based on tropes, not as heinous as swastikas or other things, but still harmful and stereotypical. And if that happens on a repeated basis, that certainly could give rise to a hostile work environment in the workplace. State and city law are a little bit more employee protective. They don't have this severe or pervasive hurdle that an employee needs to jump over. Instead, as long as an employee can demonstrate that he or she was treated less well than other employees because of a characteristic protected by law, such as religion, ethnicity, or national origin, that is enough to potentially give rise to a hostile work environment claim. And then one other that people of our faith will encounter sometimes is religious belief accommodation. So an employer does have an obligation under both federal and state law to reasonably accommodate an employee's religious beliefs or practices unless doing so would cause an undue hardship. So these could include making accommodations for a Sabbath observer who needs to leave work early on Friday. But to be clear, an employer is not required to automatically consent to every request that an employee, no matter what their faith, may make for an accommodation. So another silly example, let's say you have a brawny Jewish friend who applies for the weekend shift at a nightclub. He says he can't work on Friday night, and he'll be late on most Saturdays due to his Shabbos observance. If that nightclub didn't hire him for the weekend shift because he's Jewish and a Sabbath observer, I think a court would reasonably find that, well, if you applied for the Friday and Saturday shift and you're saying you can't really work Friday nights or Saturday nights, that can't be accommodated by an employer. But if somebody asks for Yom Kippur or other holidays, it doesn't even to be the most, quote unquote, the high holidays, the most observant, and an employer refuses to accommodate that, that could create problems for an employer. So these are some of the forms of anti-Semitism that people may encounter at work. And I know after 9/11, we'd often hear, if you see something, say something. The same rule applies in the workplace. If you see something, you should say something, whether that's to a supervisor, to HR. It is not good for anybody, the employee, your colleagues, or the employer, for these issues to fester. And unfortunately, a lot of employees choose to remain silent because they're afraid, well, if I go complain to HR or I complain to my boss, then they're not going to like me, they may fire me or retaliate against me, which brings me to the next point of the law. Under Title VII, the federal law, and the New York City and state human rights laws, an employer cannot retaliate against an employee who makes a good faith complaint of discrimination or a request for a religious accommodation in the workplace. So that should never be an excuse not to speak up, whether it's directed at you yourself or if you're just a bystander. If you were in the lunchroom and overheard somebody make a heinous comment, that doesn't mean that, well, it wasn't directed at me, so I'll just let it slide. We all are in this together. And HR and management at employers understand that whether it's anti-Semitism, bigotry against African Americans, or other protected classes, we need to report these situations to HR, to supervisors, so that it can be dealt with. So just a very quick, sort of nuts and bolts. Use your judgment. There are certain times in the workplace where if it is maybe something not as pernicious or severe as swastikas in the workplace, but somebody makes the, well, I didn't think you looked Jewish, or Jews are good with money, so you should do that math-based assignment. There may be a circumstance where you can calmly pull that person aside, express how it's offensive to you as a Jewish person, for your colleague to engage in a stereotype, and hopefully they just knock it off, and that's the end of it. But it's not your burden to confront somebody who's acting inappropriately at work. If you don't feel comfortable because it's maybe your boss or somebody in a position of power who's acting inappropriately, definitely go to HR, go to a manager and report that. And once it is reported to HR, cooperate fully in the investigation, provide any and all information to HR so they can evaluate the situation. If you have documents or communications, if people are sending heinous messages over email or text, provide that to the company so the company can take appropriate action. And hopefully you'll be satisfied with HR's investigation and the company's response, including any corrective action that the company takes. As somebody who represents employers, I can thankfully, sincerely state that the vast majority of employers, especially in this area, want to do right by their employees and their Jewish employees, and will take appropriate action. But that's not to say that there are some employers who unfortunately aren't always acting properly in accordance with the law. And if you're unhappy with how your employer is dealing with the situation, you absolutely should consult with a lawyer and get and understand what your rights are. And that may involve filing a charge with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is the federal agency responsible for enforcing anti-discrimination laws in the workplace. And then the state and city have their own commissions and divisions of human rights. And the federal government has been doing a really strong job in stepping up its efforts to combat anti-Semitism in the workplace. I actually had not known about this, but in 2021, in the face of rising anti-Semitism, as I was preparing for this talk, I learned that the EOC, which has 5 commissioners who are appointed by presidents of both parties, so it's always a 3-2 split. So right now there are 3 Democrat appointees, 2 Republican appointees. But that body in 2021 unanimously passed a resolution condemning violence, harassment, and bias against Jews in the United States. And I just wanted to read a brief excerpt, and I won't read the whole thing, but whereas our country's commitment to religious liberty, including and especially for persecuted religious minorities, stretches back to its founding, including President George Washington's pledge of safety and freedom to a Jewish congregation in 1790. And as an aside, I printed a copy of the letter, which was to Toro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, that George Washington wrote to that synagogue. And that was what the EOC, to their credit, dug up in the annals of history. And I'll skip down to the bottom, but therefore be it resolved that the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission condemns in the strongest possible terms the recent violence, harassment, and acts of bias against Jewish persons, expresses our heartfelt sympathy to and solidarity with victims and their families, and reaffirms our commitment to combat religious, ethnic, and national origin-based harassment and all other forms of unlawful discrimination, and to ensure equal opportunity, inclusion, and dignity for all throughout America's workplaces. So this was even before 10/7, when there was a rise of anti-Semitism throughout the country, that the EOC stuck its neck out. So I want to finish up by just arming you with some proactive steps that you or that your employers should be taking if they have not done so already. And these are examples that I think are low-hanging fruit, and it's based on my experience advising employers and also borrowing from the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism, which was issued by the Biden administration in May 2023. So again, all these machinations were before 10/7, and obviously have become that much more important in the wake of 10/7. And I'm also borrowing from the ADL's Workplace Pledge to Anti-Semitism. So here are 4 what I think are easy steps that employers should be taking if they haven't already. And these are things you should feel free to raise with your employers, or if you're a business owner or management, consider implementing on your own. First is to enhance training of employees on anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination. Many employers already have anti-harassment training, and in fact, in New York State, sexual harassment prevention training is already required. So many of you may have taken trainings, whether in person with somebody like me speaking to you, or online where you're clicking through things about all forms of discrimination. Encourage employers to incorporate anti-Semitism training as part of that training. So employees can help identify when a coworker is engaging in anti-Semitism and provide some background of why some of these stereotypes are so harmful. And as many of us are aware, Jews have not been included in many diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. There are a variety of unfortunate reasons for this, including stereotypes of Jews as dominating business and other power structures, or views of Jews as privileged white people who are not a traditionally disadvantaged group. And this is up to us to educate, and thankfully I think some of that is starting to break through with clients that I've been dealing with who have very robust DEI programs on the need to incorporate anti-Semitism training. And piggybacking off of that, to the extent that your employer has various policies on equal employment opportunities and other handbook policies, ensure that there's an inclusion of anti-Semitism awareness, as well as workplace religious accommodation requirements to help prevent religious discrimination. Another easy low-hanging fruit is to, again, leveraging existing DEI efforts that celebrate other cultures in your workplace. So if your workplace celebrates African American History Month, or doing something for Pride Month, hopefully last month they did something for Jewish American History Month and Heritage Month, or an event around International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Give employees the space to have Jewish voices amplify their family stories and lift up Jewish identities and traditions. So again, if your employer is already celebrating other cultures, go to your employer and say, let's do this for Jewish heritage as well. And employee resource groups is the last bucket. A lot of employers have resource groups where employees of shared backgrounds, faiths, and what have you can get together and are supported with resources from employers to discuss issues that are affecting their communities, and then can come with a unified, or as unified a voice as we Jews can have, to management on particular issues. And at my firm, we have a Jewish resource group that has been doing a lot with management, and thankfully management has had our ear, especially with what's been going on college and law school campuses, to make sure that our firm is not hiring law students who have engaged in anti-Semitism on their campuses. And this is something that is definitely sweeping among a lot of law firms. So I appreciate your patience. I wanted to close with the words of a wise person with the last name Lucas, not that Lucas. In a recent interview, EEOC Commissioner Lucas, no relation to Rabbi Lucas as far as I'm aware, said as follows, and this is a quote: "Diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts can be tremendously wonderful if done correctly. But if you are excluding Jews from that conversation, if you're ignoring the risks of engaging in anti-Semitic tropes, you can end up hurting the very people you thought you were helping." So I hope, and that's the end of the quote, I hope you can take these teachings about employment discrimination law back to your workplace and be an ambassador and a source of hope in the continued fight against anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Evan, thank you so much. We're so grateful to hear your perspective, to hear about these issues that we've been seeing all around us in the news from the perspective of someone who is really in the know. And I love how you pointed out that, so many of us who have been involved in anti-racism work and helping work for Tikkun Olam, for a more just world, for equality, have really been stunned this year to find that we need to advocate for ourselves as well as others in ways that we didn't think was going to happen in the 21st century. So thank you so much for sharing your Torah, your knowledge with us. For our next presenter, we will call upon Rabbi Rebecca Ben-Gideon.
because we're, got it. Hello. Okay. Chag Sameach, everyone. So I'm hoping to provide like a little balm for our souls after that incredibly important and clarifying and question-raising presentation. So thank you so much for that. I'm hoping that we'll go sort of from the ridiculous to the sublime, sort of. So you guys know the song Brown Eyed Girl? Okay, so we're gonna sing a little parody of it in a minute, but raise your hand if you saw, during COVID, there was a game show, usually on Facebook, and it was called Who Knows One? Anyone? Who knows one? Okay, so clearly you were doing better things with your time, but it was basically, okay, raise your hand if you've ever played Jewish geography. Okay, right. So Jewish geography, for those of you who might not be familiar, is the thing that you do whenever you meet another Jew for the first time. So what you do is you ask each other, like, where are you from? Oh, you're from Skokie. Did you go to Camperma, Wisconsin? Well, what year? Right, so until you find, oh, that's not it? Okay, fine, where did you go to school? Right, you try to find a connection. And if you're a spectator, sometimes you can bet on how long it will take two people at the party to make that connection. So that's the game. It's called, tongue-in-cheek, we call it Jewish geography. So during COVID, there was a game show hosted by Micah Hart on Facebook, and it was called Who Knows One? And it would they would pick someone, you can help me with this if I get this slightly wrong.
You'd have two competing teams.
Right.
And they would pick a Jew that didn't know any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the teams competed with one another to figure out who they knew, who knew someone, until eventually they knew someone who knew that Jew.
And they had to get that Jew also on the phone on Facebook. So that was the theme. So they had a little theme song, and it goes to Brown Eyed Girl. So please help me if you can. All right, ready? Hey, where are you from? Outside Chicago. Did you do youth group or BBYO? Did you go to summer camp overnight at the JCC? I think I know your cousin. How many shine blooms can there be? Ooh, 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 with the first name Joe. Let's find someone we both know. Mm-mm. Anytime we meet someone, we always play Jewish geography, Jewish geography. What do you say? Jewish geography, Jewish geography. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's time to play. So that's their little, their theme song, which I bring to you just for fun. But also because I think we do make fun of ourselves a little bit because it is such like a strong and sort of bizarre custom. I don't think other peoples do this as quite so much as we do from what I hear. It's one of those things that like you think it's normal, like everyone does it, and then you learn, no, that is not the case. So I also bring you, there were lots of pop culture references, including Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I think there was Seinfeld, but this is the one I could most easily dig up. And I didn't think of this until I started preparing the shiur. So in the movie Spaceballs, yes, Spaceballs, anyone? Okay, so it occurred to me that at the end, when there's like that big reveal about Darth Vader, or whatever he's called in Spaceballs. Dark Helmet. Dark Helmet says, it's a low-key Jewish geography joke, right? Say it with me. I am your father's brother's nephews, cousins, former roommates. Okay, so maybe non-Jews in Middle America they probably thought it was funny, but maybe not as funny as we think, right? Because to us, that's like a very meaningful connection. Okay, so let's turn to Shavuot and the book of Ruth. And this was maybe an early episode, and I'm going to paraphrase the text a little bit. So Ruth sends, help me. Ruth goes off to work, and she says, when she comes home, her mother-in-law says, "Where did you work today? Where did you glean?" And so she says to her mother-in-law, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." And in a paraphrase, Naomi says, "No way." Baruch Hashem, that man is related to us. Can you believe it? What are the chances? So the way it reads in the text, really, she's seeing this a little less as Jewish geography and a little more as divine providence, right? But Vered this morning, who's going to read Ruth during Shavuot, sent this to me and said, "Oh, that sounds a lot like Jewish geography," right? These unexpected, seemingly coincidental, perhaps divinely ordained, bashert, if you will, meetings of people who are far away but closely connected. So here's one of my questions about Jewish geography. Why is it so delightful? Why do we always say things like, "No way, really?" I can't, no. Like, we're surprised. But every time, right? Almost every time it works, right? So why do we express surprise and wonder at this almost ritualized finding of connections?
Because you're always in the minority, and we get happy that we know somebody, so we can count on ourselves.
Yes, yeah. She said that maybe it's because we're in the minority, and so when we meet someone who's essentially, that we're connected to, that it feels good, sort of roughly. Norman.
Because as Jews, we are not just private, but related in a connection to our greater Kehillah,
Right.
and that connection brings about redemption.
Ah,
So we get excited, sociobiologically and spiritually.
ooh, okay, there's a lot there. Maybe you want to teach the next. When you say, can I ask, okay, I'm going to try to paraphrase that. So, I don't know if I even can. Sociobiologically, can you explain what you mean by that?
We were created to be among people.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly, I'm going to talk about this in about a half hour, in terms of tefillah,
Mm-hmm.
we don't pray alone, we pray in a group.
Yes.
The way this room is made, we're in a circle with
Mm-hmm.
each other. And so when we raise our personal experience to a public abode,
Uh-huh.
we feel connection, and that is where Hashem resides.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, that feeling of connectedness, I think of it as wonder almost, like that feeling of it can, yeah, awe, that's good, exactly. It's a little bit of awe when you meet someone and you don't have a connection to them, and then you do, and you're together, and I love what you're saying. I can't wait to hear your presentation. But I think we do get that deep delight from making connections with just another Jew, right? Someone who seemed like a stranger, and then that person is sort of instantly part of your family. Like our new friend Jill, well, not so new, this was a while back. We met Jill and her family on the beach. We met her whole family. They were clearly Jewish. Long story short, she ended up giving my girls packing lists for college. It was this sort of thing where you assume almost that familial feeling. One of my other questions is this a Jewish thing, like I said before? In what respect? Do you guys know the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game? So, is this different or the same as that game? What do you think? The idea is that 6, and it comes from some sociology in I think the mid-century, Stanley Milgram, and he had this theory, the small world theory, that we were really connected to any other human by just a few steps. Now, I did read, I read one person whose perspective was like that they had done some research and really that doesn't work, except they also studied, they had a study going in Montreal, and apparently if you're a Montreal Jew, the Kevin Bacon game does work. So it was very funny. It said, basically that game is bunk, except if you're a Montreal Jew. So anyway, do we think it's the same thing? What makes this game different than... Oh, sure. It's the idea that 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon is the idea that anyone can be connected to Kevin Bacon in like 6 jumps. So, like, I am related to my cousin Dan. My cousin Dan works as a entertainment journalist, and he's probably interviewed someone who's friends with Kevin Bacon or was in a movie with Kevin Bacon. All right, cool. Right, so it's sort of the same thing as the Who Knows One game, but it's different. Tell me how. Yeah.
Jewish geography is circular and inclusive group.
Yes.
But 6 degrees of separation is a linear
Mm-hmm.
process. And we understand that love is not linear.
Mm-hmm.
Love is circular.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships are circular.
Yep.
Therefore, these are 2 different games.
Yes. I thank you, because that's really where I'm going with this, right? Like, Kevin Bacon is a party game, right? This is different, and I know that we get a lot of like smiles and laughs, and like it's a fun way to it's a fun custom that we do, but I actually feel it plays an incredibly important role in helping us to feel connected as a people. So like as a sociological practice, right? It's not a Jewish law, it's none of those things. But it helps us feel, like Norman was saying, it helps us feel that awe when we make another Jewish connection, and when we feel that we've almost found a lost member of our family. Like the story that my husband was telling about, the scrap dealers who they tapped their Jewish feet on the ground network and found someone that could help them, and they moved in with them for a long period of time. And I think part of the reason they probably even felt comfortable doing that was that Gemilut Chasadim, it's a circle, right? Circle of Gemilut Chasadim. You go to a Shiva Minyan, and someday you are also going to need people to come to your Shiva Minyan. These are all things we all need, and we feel that we can count on other Jews, perhaps in a way that we wouldn't necessarily assume with just a random person. So I want to bring you a little bit of a scholarly perspective and then a spiritual perspective. So if you look at the bottom of page 2, it says Am Echad, Jewish peoplehood, a scattered family. So this is from Sylvia Barak Fishman, who's a scholar of Jewish life. She says, Jewish geography is a manifestation of a sense of Jewish peoplehood. When people play Jewish geography, they're showing their assumption that all Jews are connected in some way to each other. And now she gives us a little historical note, which is sort of interesting. It's probably a result of the fact that Jews were forced to uproot themselves again and again due to persecution. The ability to forge an almost immediate intimacy with other Jews made it easier for immigrants to make new friends and new places. It's a way for Jews to feel part of an extended family. And I feel also that that can feel healing. Like I think about how it felt to go to the march in Washington and how almost like elated I felt on the metro with all these kids packed in there and they're singing. I mean, it was great being at the march and feeling connected to all of these people that I've never met before. I like almost don't know how to describe that feeling, but it felt like balm for my soul. And I think that's also why in this moment, Jewish peoplehood, as one of the legs of the table, so to speak, you know, it really, it's an important leg. And I think that people who are not as connected, perhaps, to Jewish life, organized Jewish life, are finding their ways in a little bit more than usual, because we need that. We need to be together. There's something about that. Okay, so this is, so Jewish geography. If you go to the next page, Moshe Waldachs. This is, so I titled this Mishpacha Echad, but Moshe Waldachs is an American rabbi who co-edited the Book of Jewish Humor and who happened to be the lay cantor at my bat mitzvah, Jewish geography. He says, it's also it's an expression of solidarity. It exhibits a ravenous curiosity about where people are from. It's a fascinating phenomenon that shows the community feels close. And here's sort of a combination between those two ideas, the family idea and the people idea. He describes being on an El Al flight to Israel. He says, in 5 minutes, everybody's playing Jewish geography. He said, there was a guy in 4J who discovered that somebody from his hometown was in 36B, but he couldn't get over to him because there was a huge minion blocking the aisle. Right? So, So, you know, all the things, we could have a whole nother Jewish geography or anthropology, sociology of things you see on El Al airplanes, but that will have to be another evening. Yeah? Yes, please. No, it's great.
Rabbi Kara gave a tikkun many years ago entitled "Saw You at Sinai." And it's a midrash that
Mm-hmm.
It's a midrash that suggests that on Shavuot we are all connected because we were all together at Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in some spiritual way, we love Jewish geography because we were all together at the Shavuot first
Uh-huh.
time. We're rejoicing that we're back together.
Yeah, so Norman is talking about a midrash that every Jewish soul was at Sinai. And actually, if you turn to the back of your packet, I actually gave that to you. Even if you can't find a connection with someone else playing Jewish geography, you can say, well, and I've heard people say this to me, well, okay, well, I saw you at Sinai. Yeah, and it's a dating app. I saw you at Sinai. We met at Sinai. We can get into it later if we want. But basically the idea is God was making a covenant and said, I'm not just making it with people, you who are here, but also with those who are not here. And so the rabbis said, huh? Like, who's he talking about? What's he talking about? Well, it must be that it's all the future Jews to come, because their souls were there, but their bodies hadn't yet come into this world. It's so powerful, right? It's so powerful. And it clicks also into some of the memory stuff that my husband was talking about. Do you know that there's also another wild midrash that when the people of Israel crossed through the sea, that the pregnant women, their wombs became like glass, and the babies inside witnessed the miracle. right? So like there's this idea that everyone experienced all these things, right? And I'm imagining like thinking with like a Kabbalah-like brain when you reunite all of these parts of the whole, that there's something healing perhaps that happens. And I want to give you one more, maybe two really quick ones. There's the Yehuda Amichai poem on page 3, which, okay, so Yehuda Amichai is an Israeli poet. This is a much longer piece, and you can look it up. But I was really struck by this, and it sort of echoes what we've just been talking about. He writes, "Some time ago, I met a beautiful woman whose grandfather performed my circumcision long before she was born. I told her, 'You don't know me, and I don't know you, but we are the Jewish people. Your dead grandfather and I, the circumcised, and you, the beautiful granddaughter with golden hair, we are the Jewish people.'" And what I love about that is it's very cosmic, right? Like it's not just like, oh, I'm from Chicago, did we go to the same camp? It's more like, it's more foundational than that. It's about our place in the universe, and that's exactly how Boyarin, who's the thinker underneath that, says. He says that Jewish geography is person-centered, right? It's not about just being like both from Chicago. It rests on time and memory and history and genealogy as much as on place markers. Now, this is the part I love. In Jewish geography, people located each other along an imaginary grid beyond the rigid dimensions of space and time. And my favorite ritual that we do that really exemplifies this is the wedding ceremony. The chuppah sits open, so it's open to the community. Everyone's connected that way. And we think of it like the tent of Abraham and Sarah. And the blessings, so listen to these blessings, and you can situate the Jewish geography of the bride and the groom standing under the chuppah being blessed. Okay, ready? So here's one. Grant great joy to these loving companions, as you once gladdened your creations in the Garden of Eden. Blessed are you, God, who gladdened the bridegroom and the bride. Okay, so we got the Garden of Eden there. Next blessing. This is excerpted from the whole one, but this is the famous Odi Shama Ba'are Yehuda, Hubuchutzot Yerushalayim. Soon may there ever be heard in the cities of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem voices of joy and gladness, voices of groom and bride, kol chatan v'kol kala. This is talking about the time to come, right? It's almost like the messianic. So you have on one side Adam and Eve, bride and groom, if you will, in Eden. You have all of the brides and grooms that are to come forever and ever. And the bride and groom of that moment are under the chuppah, in sort of a space that is outside of time. And they meet each other, and they're transformed. And so what I really love about the idea of Jewish geography is, yes, the delight that we find in the moment, but also sort of this other idea of Am Yisrael as truly being one, not only in our time, but across time and space. Chag Sameach.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Rebecca. We are going to take our second break. We will try to make it a pretty brief one, so it's just coming up on 10 o'clock. Maybe we'll say by 10:15. At the latest, we're going to come back in here, and we have fabulous presentations by Penina Saraf and by Norman Fried. So please help yourself to the ice cream and the other treats that are out in the gallery.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That was great. Here's my question.
Yes.
How do we get, my husband works for NYU as a physician, and he said it's terrible,
I know.
and nobody seems to want to change. So
Yeah, NYU's a fraud place.
it's really bad. So what does he do? He's like all alone there. Nobody,
Wait, yeah, I know, they're
because I
already.
want to have, he goes for DEI training all the time,
Right,
like the
right,
click, click,
yeah,
click, click.
right.
And it's not, there's
Nothing
no one
about
to be seen.
Right, yeah.
How could it be?
NYU's had a lot of it. I mean, well, I'm sure you're familiar with the,
So what do we do?
you may need to talk to a lawyer. Not me, because I don't
You
represent, I
represent NYU?
I have represented NYU in the past. I don't right now, but yes.
Which is your friend?
Covington and Brooklyn. So yeah, we're normally on the company or the
That's what I'm
employer
saying.
side, right? But I do know some very good plaintiffs, lawyers.
Oh,
So,
tell him.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell him, because it troubles me a
yeah.
lot.
No, I know.
And you know what else they do? They only promote people of color into positions.
Oh, yeah, that's what's going on now.
It's really bad. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do.
Well, they had an issue. It was in a few months back where it was sort of what I based my example on, where there was one professor who spouted all this very pro-Hamas, got like a slap on the wrist, and a Jewish professor.
Oh, that happened even in CUNY.
Yeah.
My son was taking classes and they were teaching incorrect information. And they get away with it.
I'm gonna, why don't you reach out to me tomorrow or whenever after the holiday, and I will direct you to somebody who I think could help.
That would be great. That would be great. Because I just think it's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. That's the part
Yeah.
that
You know, I really didn't know exactly what she was really supposed to do, because usually when I
sober 7 years, but thank you.
Well, good for you. I don't need it, but I figured I'd do
What are they giving schnapps?
He's got a bottle of whiskey. He likes his whiskey. If I get in, are you gonna make it to both?
I know. We hung out with him. Have both.
Some ice cream? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very nice,
That was
very
very good.
nice.
Thank you.
اینم خریدی به خاطر سینه که داره خودشو جا میندازه. دفعایه.
اون که میخواد بره
که میخواد بره که خیلی خیلی همه اینا باید برن ازش درس بیارن.
چجورم؟ چجور؟
حیفش. میگم که برم بگم که شما اول صحبت کنید. اون خودش رفته جلو نشسته. بی خودی.
Chag Sameach. Once again, we are proud to welcome Penina Saraf. She is going to be teaching us about the Jews of Iran and some Shavuot customs. She also has this fantastic poster, which is a wonderful resource. It's up here, but I encourage everyone to come and take a look at it when you can, because it has some wonderful information about the Jews of Iran and some special places that Penina will reference.
Chag Sameach. Since I know very well English, just forgive me if I don't read it fast. My name is Penina Saraf, and I came here 43 years ago. I came here to me and Zichrono Livracha, Dr. Lalzari, to talk about Jewish people. It was when those Meshugayim came to Iran, so I came here to see what kind of Meshugayim we are having there. And this is the picture when I came, and I'm very glad that I'm here. Forgive my English, but I'm trying. Jewish history in Iran dates the late biblical time. The book of Yeshaya, Daniel, Ezra, and Nehemiah all reference of life and experience of Jews in Persia. In the book of Ezra, for example, according to the decree of Cyrus and Darius, Kurosh and Darius, the Jews were allowed to return to Jerusalem and build their temple. This momentous event in Jewish history took place in the late 6th century BC, by which time there was a well-established and influential Jewish community in Persia. In fact, 3 years ago, the Iranian Jewish Federation of New York, in honor of Cyrus the Great, presented the Israel museum of Jerusalem gold coins and stamp with the design of Cyrus cylinder in the Cyrus chapter in Israel. And I had the honor to give it to you. Persian Jews have lived in present-day Iran for over 2,700 years. Since the first Jewish diaspora, when Sarah and Shalmaster, that's a king, exiled to the 10 lost tribe of captivity of Khorasan. In 586 BC, the Babylonians expelled large population of Jews from Judea to Babylonia captivity. Jews who immigrate in ancient Persia typically lived in their own community and include Jews from Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Iraq, Bakharistan, and mountain Jewish of the committee. That means all this was part of Iran. The ancient pre-Islamic religion of Persian was Zoro, the one that they believe in sun and Atash. This religion remained in place for thousands of years, but was placed with Islam during the Muslim conquest of 7th century. This religion started to impact Jews as well, who suffered persecution until the formation of the Pahlavi dynasty in 1929. Contemporary historians of the Muslim conquest have stated that violence committed against the Jews had hard to describe it. The Jews had to pay higher taxes in exchange for the right to practice praying and to be Jewish. Many present-day historians believe that the Pahlavi dynasty was the golden age for the Jews of Iran. They are very right. The dynasty tried to modernize Iran by, among other things. During the same period, restrictions that have been imposed on Jews were lifted and relationships between the American Jewish organization were established. In this quest of modernized Iran, the Pahlavi dynasty strengthened its ties to United States. By doing so, American Jewish organizations such as American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee and the Montefiore active tried to behave to behalf of Iranian Jews and help secure equal right to Jews of Iran. Over the time, modern Hebrew language was incorporated into the curriculum of every Jewish school in Iran. Jews were allowed to hold governmental positions such as in Ministry of Health, like Dr. Lalizari Zichrono Livracha. The Jewish education system in Iran was depended on the effort of two organizations. One was Alliance Universelle Israeli, which is from France, French humanitarian organization, and obtained permission from Pahlavi dynasty to teach Hebrew in Jewish school. And the second one was Otzar HaTorah. These two are very, very important for our culture back home, because up to here, that means till 1929, we didn't have any school and no Hebrew at all. And the things that we are having now, that's a credit to our grandfather. And the next one was Otzar HaTorah. Otzar HaTorah is coming from, for Jews of Egypt. I'm going to read it. And the second Otzar HaTorah, which was help establish a Jewish education system in Muslim country in the middle of the East and North Africa. I am the product, Otzar HaTorah and France, these two are very, very important to our education and our culture as a Jew back home in Iran. And when they came, and one of them, Otzar HaTorah, opened a school in 13 provinces for the city of Iran. Since then, and it's not much time, it's more than 55 years that we could read Hebrew, we could learn English, and we could learn Torah, but unfortunately not everybody goes to those schools. I am the products of the Alliance and Otzar HaTorah, and very grateful to both of them. That means actually the Jewish people from Iran, we should thank Otzar HaTorah and Universal Alliance. Following the Iranian Revolution 1979, Iranian Jews who immigrate to America continue to practice Judaism as their parents had done in Iran. Iranian Jews are Orthodox, our own Orthodox. In Iran, there were never we had any movement, religious movement back home, such as conservative or reform. In fact, Iranians view such a movement suspiciously. They didn't like it at all, and believe that they only bring about separation. Iranian Jews also continue to believe that family is a secret, and only thought togetherness can Judaism to be preserved. The unquestionable importance of the family is very, very important for Iranian, and they respect grandpa, respect of the grandpa and grandma and family, this is the highest. The way the Iranian Jews Iran is one of the places that has few Nevi'im, few prophets buried over there, and each one has beautiful memorial site, and they are protected by the government, which is very important. Otherwise, they wanted to, I have here all the, this one is from Esther Mordechai, and the other one is from Daniel. We have many Nevi'im that they are in Iran. Don't forget that we were before, after Beit HaMikdash, the second one, they came to Iran. The important things that include respect of family and to be together, the way that the Iranian, important things that our children, they are with us unless they get married, because they wanted them to be with us. And now I'm going to talk about minhagim. Slicha that I go so fast, but that's the way it is. Okay. The way we Iranians celebrate Chag Shavuot, since this is the season of flowers, and in Iran they call it Moed Shel Prachim. They call it the time of prachim, of flowers. The Iranian Jew celebrated Shavuot, reflecting this devotion to our ancient tradition and to the importance of the family. Okay, most families celebrate Shavuot. One of the customs that we have is that we love to have guests in our house, and especially when they pray together. I remember I was in Dr. Ostad one night of Shavuot, and it was beautiful. That means those people that they have neder, how do you say neder? Vow? Okay. Those that they have neder, or those that they are having somebody passed away on that year, this time they are getting together. First, Baruch Hashem, they are eating whatever they need, whatever they want, and then they pray in the house of that people. And tonight, probably there are many, I know already 6 of them that tonight they are doing in their house. Most families celebrate Shavuot at home, that family and guests, but holding Tikkun Leil Shavuot, it is called the Flower Festival. Since the time of the giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai and Mount Her were covered with the flower, and we decorate our home today with many beautiful bouquets. On the first night of Shavuot, after Mincha and Ma'ariv, the table of Jewish Persian are covered with the dairy-based delight, including a dairy meal and dairy dessert, including rice, milk, and ice cream. On the second night of Shavuot, also, we are having meat, and the family goes to synagogue late at night, such as we do tonight. During the day of Shavuot, we read, of course, the book of Naomi and Ruth, and congregation pray all night, reading. Now, the time. In Iran, they are reading 5 psukim from 5 books and 5 psukim from the end of the Torah. That's a lot of work to do. And then they are, that means all 5 books of Torah, Breshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim, and also the Nevi'im. That means for each book, 10 psukim. That's a lot of reading. And they are reading that, the book of the prophet, and they recite all the time. And then after that, Chacham that knows Zohar explain to them what is Zohar, and they talk about the Zohar. And also there is another one before almost it's came at 5 o'clock early in Baboker in the morning. And those Chachamim that they are among us, they are going to explain to us Taryag mitzvot, 613 mitzvot. Iranian Jew family value each other, but also education is very, very important for us, and the ongoing practicing of Jewish, which is very good. During the later years of the Pahlavi dynasty, 50% of the young Jews attended university in Tehran. The tie that bind Iranian Jew have also played to keep, this is very important, assimilation law. When I wanted to write my own paper, I had research about assimilation back home in Iran. And I try as much as I know, it was more than 20,000 in Tehran. And from that 20,000 in Tehran only we had 4 assimilation, and that was not assimilation that the girls they wanted. And 4 of them, they were from army. That means people that they are working with the army, and 1 of them was kidnapped, and 3 of them, they had to be whatever. And this is very important for me, because assimilation for us, and God forbid to get married with non-Jew, it was a big hit. Okay. The tie that, no assimilation, okay. Iranian Jew children typically live at home until the age of marriage and attend their community synagogue. Each neighborhood has its own synagogue. There is a supporter and voluntary army that they are taking care of the synagogue, the true contribution and donation of the aliyot of the Torah. And there is also custom, every time that anybody goes aliyah for the Torah, they give donation. I believe that I am character in our people's story, with my own character to write. And so are we all. To be Jew is to see yourself a part of a story, to make it live in our time, and to do your best to hand it to those who will come after us. I wish I could say whatever I want in English, but when I go to Google Translation, they destroy my writing. And it's better not to say. But I love you very much, no matter if I talk or not talk. And my great love to my real good teacher. I love you very much, because I wanted to be a rabbi, and I couldn't because of my situation. My situation was I don't say it now, right now, but I'm glad that you are. Thank you very, very much. Forgive me if the vocabulary was not
Panina, we should all be so lucky. We should all be so lucky as to be as eloquent as you. Thank you so much for filling us in on some background of the Jews of Iran. Those of us who don't come from that background, we know bits of it, but it's always good to have some of those spaces filled in. And I also loved hearing about some of the Shavuot practices, like the home prayers and rituals as well, which I wasn't familiar with. So thank you. Yishar kochech. You are a teacher to all of us and a scholar. Dr. Norman Fried, Acharon Chaviv, very often at a Tikkun Leil Shavuot, we know that energy sometimes is a little bit diminished by the end, and we value all of our presenters, and we often count on our last presenter to keep us going and keep our energy up, and we trust that presenter to be somebody whose words we value. tremendously. So for that honor, we invite Dr. Norman Fried to share his wisdom with us.
I first want to say, Penina, Fadat Sham, Doret Bagadam. Okay? I did my best. See, my Farsi is not good, and your English is brilliant. So thank you. Okay, good. So I am a clinical psychologist. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I specialize in trauma and bereavement. And everyone here knows me, most of you, and my work is really related to helping children and families who have been through all sorts of traumas. I wanted to talk tonight about how trauma and tefillah together can help us become closer to Hashem. And I want to do so by starting with a story. Yesterday, a very beautiful man who lost his brother to cancer said to me, "Doc, what is success in trauma therapy?" And I'd never been asked that in 33 years of working. And I looked at him and I said, "I'm going to give you 4 answers." And the first answer is that I believe that grief and trauma, we don't enter into trauma. Trauma enters into us. And we wake up in the morning and we trip over it, and it becomes, for a while, the sole definition of who we are. But the more we talk about it, the more we begin to move it from here, where we can't see our place in the future, to here, where it becomes our unbidden companion through time. It never goes away, but it doesn't stop us and assault us like it used to. My second answer is that I believe that every one of us holds a dual citizenship in 2 realms. One is the land of the living, and the other is the land of the afflicted or the grieving or those who have been hit by trauma. And as we get older, we discover that includes every one of us. And that we have to learn to go comfortably between those 2 worlds. My third answer to him was that grief and trauma is like a coat. It's likened to an uncomfortable coat. Many of my patients will say that during Shiva and for the months that passed after that, Yud Bet Chodesh, when they were in Avelut, that they felt as if the coat was itchy and scratchy and they did not want to wear it. But over time, the coat becomes almost a second layer. And they wouldn't want to shed it because it is part of who they are, but not all of who they are. And then I turned to him and I said, but my 4th answer is the most important. For success in trauma therapy is ultimately a deepened faith in God through prayer. So the Rav, Soloveitchik, says that through tefillah we become linked one soul to another. And Martin Buber, of course, says through tefillah we bring the I closer to the thou. And Hillel says through tefillah we become connected to the community. And all of this combined, we see that prayer elevates us from a personal self-concern, aloneness, existential isolation, and more like a union with suffering in the entirety of the world, which we see now after October 7th. And we also see this in the book of Job, where Job finally learns the true nature of prayer, which is that prayer's plural voice sweeps us into a public place and not a private place. And we discover that we are never, ever truly alone. So I took my film crew and we went to Israel, and I spent 10 days there. This is after Rabbi Josh and a lot of us had spent 5 unbelievable days earlier in the year. And my film crew is comprised of not Jewish people, lovely people, but not necessarily very faith-based people. And I would go from hospital room to hospital room at Tel Shemer Hospital, at Belev Achad in the private home across the street from the hospital. We went all over the country, the Gush, the West Bank, Re'im. And after every interview, I would turn to the documentarian and I would say, so what do you think? He sat behind the camera. Aren't these amazing interviews? And he would say, they're okay. And I said, what do you mean they're okay? And he said, well, there's a lot about God here. And I said, oh, okay. Well, let me just assure you that we're in the land of Israel. And this is where Hashem is, as well as everywhere else. I didn't say Hashem because he doesn't speak Hebrew. But that we are working with people we're interviewing and learning from people who are fighting for the sovereignty of a nation, for Jewish people. But aside from that, I also said, when we are traumatized, when we enter into the land of the grieving, so many things happen. But one most powerful sequela of it is that we are challenged by our faith. We begin to not really believe in an ordered world, or we don't believe that God is actually delivering the promises we thought that he would. So for me, asking about God and talking about God was not only essential, it was not going to happen. So during every interview, which mostly was in English, I would all of a sudden break into Hebrew. And I would say to the Chayalim or to the released hostages that we were working with, Tagiru li ala regeshot legabe emunah, tell me about your feelings of faith. And he didn't understand because he would just think I was trying to help them with their understanding of my questions. But every one of them spoke about God. And at the end of the trip, he said to me, everyone here talks about God. And I said, yeah, that's what we do. We're Jews. So I want to tell you what happens in the life of someone who's been traumatized and how tefillah combines for healing. The most powerful side effects of being traumatized, particularly, and this applies to all of us in this room, from the difficulties we have in life, but particularly from the soldiers that I worked with when I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, is something known as a cognitive triad, which is three things. We get flashbacks to the time that we were hurt, when we heard the news, when we were affected by life's greatest tragedies. We also have flash forwards where we're thinking where we're going to be in the future, and we actually imagine things we wish we couldn't imagine, but it's almost like it's on a tape. The second is something known as a hypervigilance to the recurrence of danger, which many of us simply call the waiting for the next shoe to drop syndrome. We just know. We tell ourselves another tragedy is going to befall us. And the third is an absence and a belief in an ordered world. Now, there are many other signs of trauma that we saw in our soldiers and the released hostages, including a need to be away from people, a numbness, a shock. I don't feel a thing. I know what happened, but I don't feel anything. And conversely, rage and irritability, fatigue, malaise. These are all signs of trauma. But the most powerful of all of the signs of trauma is a challenged faith in a higher power. And that's the spiritual section that I'm talking about here. The Rav asserts that man seeks God in times of struggle. This is tefillah. Abraham Joshua Heschel says that God is in search of man, his famous book. During times of struggle, this is how God and man relate. This too is tefillah. Nachmanides instructs prayer is a commandment in troubled times. And this is tefillah. And I say that prayer creates a metaphysical fellowship through which healing and redemption can occur. Why? Because a majestic relationship is being born in what I call the God and man reunion. And this too is tefillah. So we see, and my documentarian eventually came to see, that therapy and prayer have a lot in common. For both, the hope of redemption exists through the struggle. There's an alchemy of love and attention. There's an appreciation of connection. And there's the presence of an all-knowing higher power. I want to tell you how this played out and how I saw this in some of the interviews that we had over in Israel. I was working with a beautiful man who had been a veteran of the Lebanon Wars. He's in his 50s, a family of his own. He came to our apartment in Herzliya with a service dog. And he said to us on film that after being in the wars, he developed such a severe form of post-traumatic stress disorder that he can't really be around people. He gets panic attacks, and they are unbidden and overwhelming. And so he's always with a service dog, and he brought his dog, of course, with him, and this is the third generation of the service dog that he had originally had. This is a service dog who can feel when Gal is having a panic attack. He can actually lick his sweat and detect the level of cortisol in his brain, and knows exactly which part of his arms to caress or to lick to help reduce the cortisol levels. And he said, I can't do this without my dog. The dog is always with me. And for him, the dog and his family create an attachment that he calls his attachment to God, his dvekut, his cleaving, that it cannot exist without Hashem. I sat with a woman named Moran Stella. We were in, and I don't know how I got there, but we were in Shimon Peres's office, and I was sitting at his desk right in front of his Nobel Peace Prize. And this woman walked in and said, I hear you're making a movie, and I want to talk to you about my story. I have 4 minutes. And in 40 minutes, she was willing to tell me what she was willing to tell me. And she said that she was at Nova. She wasn't in the rave. She wasn't dancing. She was selling jewelry at a booth. Many of you may know Moran and her story. She's all over the internet. She was actually here in New York last week. And she said that at 6:28, she heard all sorts of explosions. And she was grabbed. She said, I was grabbed by some terrorists. And speaking Arabic, I was able to talk my way out of it. And I ran. But I ran into the hands of other terrorists. And again, I was able to talk my way out of it. But eventually, she said, I was hiding under a car, and the third time I couldn't escape. And they put me in the back of a truck, and they took me to Gaza, where I spent 51 days in a tunnel. She said, there is no such thing as time in Gaza. There are no days, there are no hours, and there are no minutes. There are only seconds. And she said, I sat with Hashem second by second, and this is how I survived. The third story I want to share with you in terms of where faith comes into healing the trauma is with a story from Ziv Koran. Ziv Koran is a famous man that I did not know. He's like the Annie Leibovitz of Israel. He's a documentarian and photojournalist. So we had gone to his installation of all these beautiful pictures. We were told by someone that he would be happy to let us use his pictures for our documentary film. We went there, and there were hundreds of people at the Shimon Peres Center for Innovation in Jaffa. And he wanted to talk to us, but we really couldn't do any filming in a loud, dark place. So we went up to Shimon Peres' office, thankfully. He sat down and spoke to us for a very long time, and he said, we live in an unresolvedly sorrow-filled world. And the only thing I can do is continue to go to the front lines. And I said to him, is that why you got up in the morning from where you lived in Tel Aviv on October 7th and went all the way down to the Nova Festival? And he said, with one hand, I took my gun, and with the other, I took my camera. And when I got there, with one hand, I shot terrorists, and with the other hand, I shot footage. And I said, why'd you do it? And he said, this is the only way I heal from trauma. I need to go back to the front lines. And I said to him, you know, in America, we have a different approach to surviving trauma. Therapeutically, we have a cognitive and spiritual and emotional dialogue that helps us embrace the pain before we place the pain. And he looked at me and he said, you can't place the pain in this country. Because the minute you place the pain, there's another intifada. There's another massacre, another explosion. So what we do, he said, is we just go right back to the front lines, because the front lines is where I feel Hashem's presence. And I looked at him and I said, in 33 years of work in my version of the front lines with trauma patients, my wife, my kids, my friends, my own colleagues laugh at me and say, you always take on so much. If it wasn't for Shabbos, you'd be working 7 days a week. They should only know I work Motzei Shabbat. So, and I have a very lovely wife who allows me to do this. But I always thought that there was something wrong with the fact that I was working so hard until Ziv Koran said, no, you're like us in Israel. You feel the presence of Hashem when you get to the front lines. So this is the most important thing I wanted to share with you about the therapeutic lesson that comes from both tefillah and trauma. Like my patients, like the soldiers and the hostages and the bereft mothers and the photojournalists and all the folks that live in Israel, we are all traumatized. Life is difficult. Life is beautiful and we have joy, but we're also overwhelmed with the absence of joy sometimes. And I discovered that trauma causes, as I said before, a division. We begin to divide the world into two types of people. Those that are afflicted and those who are as of yet unafflicted. And the parallel land of grief is some place that we come and go in and out of. It's a dual citizenship. We have passports to both lands. And as I came back to the States and told my wife and kids everything I'd gone through, and I could tell that after 15 minutes they'd heard enough, but I needed days to debrief, I found myself going to the Nova Festival site exhibition in Wall Street. Even though I had been in Re'im only 3 days earlier, I found myself constantly talking to the interviewees that I had become friends with through WhatsApp. Because I too, like Ziv Kuran, needed to feel the presence of Hashem through